Want to be successful in life? Don't screw up. That's kind of advice from one of the world's richest men, Charlie Munger, who passed away not too long ago in his 90s. He was a billionaire. That's the partner of Warren Buffett. And he talked about how a lot of his success came from, just avoiding mistakes, not screwing up. So if you're an expat like me, living in Southeast Asia in retirement, looking to have a good time in the end game of your life, it's good advice to follow.
A lot of people are wearing signs, danger, danger, do not touch, and people just charge right ahead. That's a mistake.
So the idea from this video actually came from a YouTuber extraordinaire, my friend Bill, who has a pretty popular channel up in Chiang Mai, Unseen
Thailand.
What is it?
Unseen Thailand in Chiang Mai.
Yeah, so the whole idea of being a success as an expat is to just not screw up.
She's looking at you.
Who is?
She wants to be in your video.
No, not video, please, no.
Okay. So what's the thesis about?
I don't know.
Just don't screw up.
Don't screw up. Don't screw up away from home.
That's right.
Don't do anything you wouldn't want to tell your mom about.
There's a story that goes along with this. I'm going to tell you about it in a little while. I just wanted to give Bill credit where credit is due. It is his idea. As a matter of fact, it's his friend that I'm going to be talking about. Unlucky Jim. So Jim's story is a tragedy. It's right up there with Shakespearean and Greek tragedies. But it was mostly self-inflicted. Jim was about 60-ish when he retired. He was a corrections worker in Seattle, so he got to retire a little bit early, and he had saved some money, and he had done well as a married guy back in Seattle. And after he retired, he got divorced and came to Thailand. He was drawn to the lotus blossom. I don't know, something like that, if you want to make a poetic story out of it. But he came here and hooked himself up with a young Thai girl up in Chiang Mai. And he was smitten by her. She was much younger than him, pretty Thai girl, and they tend to be very alluring lasses. Yes, they are. I've been lured into it myself. And but what I didn't do, Jim did. He bought her a house. He built her a house in the village where she had grown up. It's not an unusual story up here. You can build houses in the rural parts of Thailand for a fraction of what a house would cost in the more developed world. So it can be very beguiling for a guy to be talked into that type of thing. I'll be with this woman, and she'll take care of me as I age. It didn't work out that way. I don't know who initiated the breakup, but when Bill ran off to the Philippines to find himself another little honey, he had neglected to take his, Thai girlfriend, who he had a joint account with. I guess he had to do that because the house was in her name and it was mortgaged. It was a mortgaged house, and he just up and left. Jim tended to be a big drinker, and they very often, folks in that category, make impulsive decisions, and that's what Jim did. He ran off to the Philippines, and not sure whether he intended that to be a permanent thing or not, but certainly his girlfriend was pissed, and she emptied his bank account of about $10,000-$15,000, wiped him out. So now he's broke. Now, because he had his pension, he wasn't destitute, but, whatever money he had saved was gone. Poof, up in the air. And that was the end of Jim's bank account. But he's in the Philippines, and he did find himself another little honey. And he was palling around with that honey. As a matter of fact, he took her around different places. I think he brought her back here, and then he went back to the Philippines, and then he had a stroke. And his Philippine honey wasn't interested in taking care of a disabled guy. And Jim was actually in big trouble in the Philippines. He didn't have a lot of money because his ex had cleared him out. And he was disabled. He could barely get her. He was stuck in the hospital for quite a while, paying out of pocket. I guess he was paying that with credit cards, whatever. But his hospital stay was extensive, and he did eventually recover from the stroke. But he did that back in Seattle because his ex-wife was compassionate enough to fly to the Philippines and drag his dumb ass back to Seattle. Well, when he got better, he came back again. He came back to the Philippines and repeated the same thing. He got sick again. You know, he had health issues. Again, big drinkers, when they get into their 60s and 70s, tend to fall off a cliff health-wise, and that was kind of happening to him. And it's not an uncommon story. That's why I'm telling it to you. You know, these are the mistakes that guys make, guys in my age category make, when they come here and they get all wrapped up in chasing, you know, pretty young women around. I understand the attraction, but as Bill said at the beginning of the video, you know, it's best not to do anything that you wouldn't want to tell your mother about. I mean, that's a good guideline for, you know, making decisions about who you're dating and what you're doing when you're dating, and certainly not making these dumb errors. So now in his second, you know, convalescent trip in the Philippines, Bill was lucky enough to have this woman back in Seattle. Not Bill. Jim was lucky enough to have this woman that he was once married to back in Seattle once again for a second time fly to the Philippines and save his dumb ass. And he's back in Seattle now, and I hope he's doing all right. You know, based on that story, I think that, you know, maybe his mistake was leaving that woman in the first place. She seems to really care for him. And perhaps she wasn't as cute being in his age cohort, but she certainly is loyal and compassionate and caring for his dumb ass. But at any rate, you know, these are some of the, you know, the pitfalls and bad mistakes that if you avoid, you know, if you want to come here and meet up with, you know, a woman here in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, it can be done. You know, if you have if you have some resources, you're a very attractive man here. That's the way it works out. But you have to do it in a smart way and be prepared for the fact that you're hooking up with another human being that has desires as well. So, you know, if you're hooking up with some young girl, you know, who's attracted to you because you have a few bucks in the bank, you know, you have to remember that that's the basis of the relationship. And, you know, make decisions that, you know, make smart decisions about relationships here. I've been in Asia for 15 years. I didn't come here for women. I came on a work contract 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago. And that was to Singapore. And I've been in Southeast Asia ever since. So, you know, that wasn't my objective when I came here. Now, I've had relationships, and I'm not in one now. But I've never, you know, committed myself to these kinds of mistakes. I've always made sure I was very prudent about, you know, what I did with my money, how much I was giving out at any given time, and made sure I had enough to take care of myself in the process, just in case, you know, I'm not going to live forever either. There's going to come a day that I fall off a cliff as well. But I'm going to talk about that in the next video in terms of making mistakes about in retirement, about your health and how you can manage that. You know, there are two things. I'm reading a book by a guy named Peter Attia, who's a doctor, really smart guy. I mean, you know, really brainiac kind of guy. He was an engineer and a physician, and you know, and now he's back to being a physician, I think. And his specialty is aging, you know, and not just taking care of people. He has a whole different approach to aging for men and women who are aging, not to increase their lifespan so much, but to increase their health span, so you can enjoy your golden years like I am. When I started reading his book, I found out I'm doing most of the things that he's suggesting to stay fit and healthy in your old age. And you know, I'm doing pretty good. I'm still having fun at 76. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my next video. And so if you're still here, thanks for watching. See you soon.